Manny Pacquiao's defeat is not his tragedy. The world thought he was unbeatable, which is tragic. Every time he entered the ring, the entire country of the Philippines held its breath. 80,000 people shouted his name beneath the lights of Las Vegas, and the fist was hoisted high after every victory. The streets of Manila erupted in fireworks at 3 in the morning after his victory. The entire country fell silent after his defeat. The world chooses to remember that Pacquiao, despite being the tiniest man in the ring, he was larger than all of his opponents. The machine that delivered hundreds of blows in a combat at a rate that was impossible for the human eye to keep up with. Oscar de la Hoya was once forced to resign by the destroyer. Once used a single punch to render Ricky Hatton unconscious. Miguel Cotto was once brought to his knees by a relentless barrage of blows. The world champion in 8 different weight classes is the only fighter in history. A politician, presidential candidate, and national icon with an estimated net worth of $250 million. The guy behind those fists, however, was invisible to the outside world. After winning, the man sat by himself in a hotel room and unlocked his phone to see messages from his wife threatening divorce. While Freddie Roach went into the ring, the man was captured on camera lying face down on the ring floor, unmoving. The world held its breath, unsure if the victim was still conscious. The man who had to borrow money to purchase storm relief goods for his fellow citizens after his bank accounts were blocked due to a $50 million tax debt. The world rejected the man who lost both the Senate and the presidential elections due to a single statement. Additionally, Pacquiao was the man who stepped in front of the national television camera and said, "I know how to gamble, drink, and have many women. I don't care about any of it." In the ring, Pacquiao's fists were the fastest, most accurate, and most vicious that boxing had ever seen. Outside of the ring, the same hands were unable to maintain sobriety, fidelity, or money due to the intoxication of celebrity. When the world saw the fists, they assumed the man behind them was equally powerful. They were mistaken. De La Hoya, Hatton, Cotto, and Margarito may all be eliminated by those fists, but the evil within him would remain. At 2 in the morning, they were unable to knock out the bottle of alcohol on the table. The M couldn't stop the cunning phone calls. When the arena lights went off, the emptiness could not be eliminated. He also had to look in the mirror. Manny Pacquiao is still fighting at the age of 47, long after all the fighters of his generation had put up their gloves. He doesn't know who he is if there isn't another battle, not because he hasn't experienced enough glory. His ability to win is no longer the question. What actually happened to the man who everyone previously thought was unbeatable is the question. Please hit like for Pacquiao and subscribe to the channel before we go more into the wounds behind those fists. On December 17, 1978, Emmanuel de Pedron Pacquiao was born in Quibue, a little village covered in red dust in Bukidnon province on the southern Philippine island of Mindanao. Rosalio Pacquiao, his father, was an agricultural worker. In order to get a few more pesos, his mother, Dionia de Pedron Pacquiao, worked at the market selling vegetables. Growing up in a small tin-roofed home in General Santos City, where the family relocated when he was still a small child, Manny was the 4th of 6 siblings. Here, poverty was not something to get over and then write about in a memoir. The boy breathed that air every day. It was not knowing where the next meal would come from when you woke up on the cement floor. Before morning, the child went out on the streets with a basket of pandesal bread, selling each loaf for 1 peso. A 10-year-old child may work at any job as long as there was money to bring home at the end of the day, including loading and unloading at the market, gathering aluminum cans and assisting with street sales. Cedra Sawe Elementary School in General Santos City is where Manny finished his elementary education. However, that was nearly all of his formal schooling. Those were hardly romantic times. The boy's stomach ached every night from genuine hunger. It was a shortage of everything that kids in Manila took for granted, including shoes, books, power, and everything else. It involved observing his mother at work starting at 4 a.m., the M until late at night, yet still lacking sufficient funds to cover the kids' tuition. The family then disintegrated in the midst of poverty, which was already a major factor in everything. When Manny was 11 years old and in the 6th grade in 1990, Rosalio and Dionia got divorced. Rosalio's departure was neither an unexpected death nor an accident. It was a purposeful desertion. When a parent passes away, a child may think that dad would have stayed if he had the option. However, when a father leaves the house and decides not to return, the child is faced with a more cruel question than any blow life could provide. Why couldn't he stay because of me? Many years later, the media uncovered a detail that is so horrific that it is difficult to accept. Little Manny's favorite dog had been slain by Rosalio before he left. Rosalio killed and consumed the dog. Trainer Freddie Roach told the Daily Mail in 2015. Rosalio refuted it. "I did not murder his dog." Perhaps there is a miscommunication. The two versions will always represent the exact truth. The 11-year-old boy's internal reaction to losing both his father and his soul buddy at the same time is more important than what happened to the dog. When the father and son reconciled several years later, Pacquiao claimed to have forgiven him right away. Both have endured far too much suffering over the course of too many years due to one terrible event in their lives. However, forgiveness does not imply healing of the wound. It just indicates that he decided to stop looking at it. And Pacquiao would avoid looking at his own injuries for the majority of his life. Dionia became everything after Rosalio left. Born in Sarangani province in 1949, she was raised in poverty and had never experienced a different kind of existence. She worked alone to maintain the family, getting up early, selling veggies until nightfall, and doing extra cooking and laundry. She was the last wall separating the 6 kids, the pillar, the roof, and total collapse. However, Manny was unable to continue attending school despite her exceptional endurance. After elementary school, he left school. Manny Pacquiao was concerned about whether his mother and brothers would have enough food tomorrow, whereas other kids his age in Cebu or Manila were more concerned with homework and future plans. Nobody had a big dream for him when he started boxing. In general, Santos City in the early 1990s, boxing was one of the few ways a poor dropout boy without a job could earn money. No teacher ever looked into his eyes and declared, "You will become a world champion." He didn't punch to cure his soul. To eat, he punched. A few hundred pesos were awarded for each local competition triumph. Every defeat meant returning home empty-handed and hungry. The child learned a lesson from boxing that no school could impart to his body or mind. Hunger is the result of losing. To win is to survive. There is no middle ground. However, the child found what poverty could not take away in the midst of the bouts on the red dirt ring, where the audience consisted of neighbors and the prize money was a few crumpled bills, unusually quick hand movements, an innate ability to avoid blows as if he could see them coming, and feet that never stopped moving, as if he had spent his entire life running and didn't know how to stop. For Manny Pacquiao, boxing was never a game. It was how he lived, how he breathed, and how he prevented poverty for his mother and siblings. Furthermore, the line between life and the ring is never truly distinct when a child learns to fight for survival starting at age 12. For the remainder of his life, the boy would have a fighting habit. The 16-year-old lad entered the professional ring for the first time on January 22, 1995, when he faced Edmund Enting Ignacio in a 4-round bout in the light flyweight division at a tiny Philippine arena that most people would never be familiar with. The child was the lightest, shortest, and least noticeable class in the entire professional boxing system, standing 1 meter, 66 tall, and weighing less than 48 t. How he toured. One particular aspect of the Pacquiao mystique eventually became indispensable. The child didn't meet the class's minimum weight criteria. In order to meet the fighting weight, He had to cram iron and stones into his pants pockets when he stepped on the scale. After winning that first bout, he continued to win. However, early 1990s boxing successes in the Philippines were nothing like what outsiders could have imagined. There were no international audiences, no international television, and no sparkling stadiums. This was the Asian light boxing underground scene. Creates makeshift dusty rings in schoolyards or community arenas, lights that flicker. Locals were in the audience, wagering several dozen pesos. This is not a PR campaign. This man truly believes that God pulled him out of the abyss. And regardless of the viewer's religious beliefs, the sincerity in this journey, confirmed by his wife, lawyer, trainer, advisor, and more than a decade of consistent actions, is hard to deny. The Marquez knockout fight and the dream of hearing God's voice. Those two moments, more than a year apart, together formed the deepest bottom and the biggest turning point in Manny Pacquiao's life. He collapsed on the ring, the place where he was once strongest. And he got up not with his fists but with faith. That was the greatest victor.